EWG Community Working Group. That would be really helpful for all of us to see who's here and who's part of the working group. So we're going to get started. This is in closed caption in English and Spanish. So English closed captions are available within the Zoom and YouTube. Users can follow this link to view. Kayla, if you can go to the next slide. To view both Spanish and English captions. And it's in a separate browser window. So there's the link. So next slide, how to access closed captions. At the bottom middle of your screen, you should see a menu of options. If you can't see the menu, you can hover your mouse over the bottom middle of the screen and click on CC icon right there. In a separate window, caption will appear. Next slide. Zoom participation, ASL, American Sign Language interpretation is available. We have someone on right now. Please join audio by either phone or computer, but not both. We encourage participants to turn your video on. If you have joined by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand after invited to speak and dial *6 to unmute yourself. Please keep your audio on mute when not speaking. If you experience technical difficulties, please contact the Zoom chat feature. Looks like most people are on. Next slide. So our agenda for tonight is we're going to have a little bit of an introduction icebreaker. It's great to see you all. Talk about preliminary design options, overview of high capacity transit, interactive sessions in breakout rooms, and report back, and then additional ways to engage. Next slide. We have some meeting agreements. We went over this last time, but just a reminder, put relationships first, keep focused on our common goal, notice power dynamics in the room, create space for multiple truths and norms, be kind and brave, practice examining racially biased systems and processes, and look for learning. Next slide. So we're going to take just a moment for community working group members to introduce each other to the group. So what I'd like you to do first is have your name and affiliation. And then we're going to just do a little bit ice warmer. What is the most modes you have used in one commute? So Kayla, if you want to hop to the next one, next slide. Working group framework. Sorry, I must have missed something here. So sorry. So sorry, I'm going to go back. The role of our working group is to provide feedback on specific transportation issues. Multimodal commuters to provide feedback on the interstate bridge user experience from a commuter perspective, including access to public transit and other modes such as biking, driving, and rolling. And your feedback will be used to inform program staff and shared input with IBR decision makers. Next slide. Oh, I must have missed that. Did we miss this, Kayla? Back to the introductions. There it is. Sorry. Okay, here we are. So again, if you have renamed yourself as a community working group, a person, that would be great. So what I'm going to do is Kayla, if you can drop that in the chat. But we're asking for folks to do the introduction, name, affiliation, what is the most modes you've used in one commute. And what I'll do is, Kayla, if we can open up so everybody can see each other. And what I'll do just to make it easier is to have everybody, I'll call on you as I see you on the Zoom. Kayla, can we have you stop sharing so we can see everyone? There we go. Thank you. So let's see, who do I see first? I see Michaela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michaela Williams. My affiliation is I'm a community member on the community advisory group, and then just a community working group member. And then my most modes of transportation that I've ever taken was I took a car, and then I took the Max line, and then I took a bus to my final destination.
Thank you, Michaela. Peter.
My name's Peter Bryant, and I'm on the Multimodal Commuting Working Group. I got it all wrong. It's okay. The CWG. And the most modes I've used is probably 2, I guess, biking to the train, the Max line.
Thank you, Peter. Soren.
Hi, everyone. I am in the community working group as well, Soren Roth. And I would say 3, like Peter, the biking to the Max, but on occasion I've gotten a flat tire and had to walk a bit. So, 3 modes.
All right, thanks, Soren. Next, I see Cecilia.
I think I'm unmuted. If I have to take more than one mode, I'm not going. That's it. I walk to and from bus stops a lot. I guess that counts as 2.
I think it does. Thank you, Cecilia. Stephen Koch.
I think probably 3 modes for me, probably 2.
And what are they, Stephen?
Bike, train or Max, and then airport.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. How about you, Dane?
It would have to be 2. It would be car to a park and ride, and then carpooling with someone else from there.
Thank you, Dane. Roger.
I'd have to say the same, probably trains and cars, and it's ease of travel. It's all about ease of travel. So the easier you can make it, the more you're going to see some of us older people venturing out to anything beyond that. So
Thank you, Roger. Andre, welcome. Good to see you.
You as well. Yes, Andre Lighty Walker. I use he, him pronouns. I'm with the Street Trust on the CWG. And I would say 3 modes, biking to streetcar to walking.
Thank you, Andre. See, I see Victor.
Victor, I'm the CAG and the CWG. And I'll say 3, so either walking to the light rail, and then if you count going to the airport, airplane, and then at my final destination, subway, so 4.
All right, good job. Stephen Goff.
Drive to the park and ride, and then the bus to the Max, and then back once, because it was too painful.
Thank you, Stephen. See, I see Susan Pitchford. Welcome.
So for me, it would probably be 3. So driving to the park and ride, then Max in from there, and then taking a bicycle to my final destination.
Thanks, Susan. Now, I see there is somebody on the phone. 503. Last numbers are 5977. You're welcome if you're a CWG member to jump right in.
Sorry, that's Mike Corrente. I'm a TriMet. I have to call
okay.
in and be on video. Sorry about that.
All right, that's great. Okay, I think I see Shane. You have logged in, Shane Nils.
Hi, I'll apologize for the lack of camera. I was eating there. So I'm on the multimodal group, and I guess the most modes I've taken was to drive into the max.
Great, thank you. I think we had 4 was the winner, so thank you for that. There were a few planes and trains and automobiles, so that was great to see. So I guess, Kaylee, if you want to share your screen, we're going to do just to get to slide 8 on the community working group framework. Sorry, I skipped over that. I got excited about. So as you know, there's 4 community working groups. This is your second and at least last organized one. We have active transportation, downtown Vancouver, and Hayden Island Marine Drive. And you're all at-large community members. So we really appreciate the time you put in so far. We also have CAG, Community Advisory Group members on the community working groups. They identified themselves here. We've got Michaela, and we've also got Victor. So thank you for representing. And we're hoping we're going to meet twice as we have, but we don't anticipate additional meetings, but may reconvene on an as-needed basis. And at the end of today's meeting or this evening's meeting, I'll talk a little bit more about where we are and what sort of feedback we might be looking for. So next slide. I think we went through this one already. So we're looking for feedback interstate bridge designs. And so I will hand it over to Brad Phillips, one of our technical leads, to talk about some preliminary design options.
Thanks. I'm Brad Phillips. I am with the IBR program. I'm leading the Highway and Civil Design program. So now through the end of 2021, we're continuing the development of preliminary designs. And these are done to address the changes since the previous planning effort, include comments that we are hearing from the citizens as well into those preliminary designs. We're embedding equity and climate considerations with the design concepts more so that might have been from the previous planning efforts. We're going into a screening process and a screening criteria of the designs that we have been looking at. And engaging with the community in this meeting, plus some online surveys and open houses that are occurring right now too, to get further input. And we'll take all that input that we're getting and continue to screen the options, incorporate design ideas into those, and collaborate with our partners and stakeholders in early 2022 to reach consensus on the IBR design solution. We're really trying to focus our attention on what has changed since the previous effort. And the design options that we're putting together, we are responding to those changes while incorporating the current regional values and priorities into the IBR solution. The design options pertain, we've separated the design options into the following program areas, just to make discussions of them a little bit easier. The bridge crossing over the Columbia and the alignment of that bridge. The downtown Vancouver interchanges and how transit operates into downtown. Vancouver Interchanges, which is the northern part of Vancouver, Mill Plain up to SR 500. The Oregon side of Hayden Island and Marine Drive. Transit as it is defined in the entire corridor, and then the bike and pedestrian improvements and how those are integrated into the design options. In the last meeting, we heard some top concerns from you, and those were congestion across the bridge lifts interrupting the commutes that occur in off-peak areas, not enough lanes, that relates probably to congestion. Sight distance is difficult on the bridge, approaching from both directions, and difficulty to get into traffic on the freeway. specifically from SR 14 west getting onto I-5, but we've heard other ramps as well. So as I talk about the design options, I'll try to address how we are addressing these concerns in each of the designs. So starting with the bridge crossing, we have a variety of options that differ in constructability, bridge footprint, and alignment. I just want to point out that all options provide the dedicated transit way and a wide multi-use path that is common to everything that we're looking at in this corridor. And we're still working with the Corps of Engineers to determine, and all of our partners on what the actual bridge height will be. So that is something that is a bit of a process that we're in discussions now, but it won't be settled for until next year. So looking at these three options, the one on the left is the previous work that was done from 2013. It has two different bridges. The west side bridge is the southbound direction over the top of high capacity transit. The east side bridge is northbound vehicles on top of the shared use path. In this version, the alignment was a curved bridge. And that curved bridge is fairly difficult to build because of the constantly curving nature of it. And it's been suggested by many that we look at a straight alignment. And so that is option 2. It is the same bridge configuration in the cross sections as shown at the bottom of the screen, but by being a straight alignment is just much easier to construct. Option 3 is a variation that we're calling the stacked alignment, which is our nomenclature for stacking lanes, northbound lanes underneath southbound lanes, as shown in that cross section. High capacity transit and the multi-use path will still be included, and we're studying various options of where those are located. This one is showing high capacity transit on the west side and the multi-use path on the east side, but we have several variants of what that might look like. And the point of this option, the benefit of this option is a smaller footprint, especially over the water. It would go back to being side by side on land as it crosses over Hayden Island and into downtown Vancouver. But the bridge itself and all the impacts into the water, including foundations, would be minimized. Next slide. In downtown Vancouver, there's two different options of how we connect the bridge corridor into the existing I-5 corridor through Vancouver. Again, all options here would include the multi-use path that would connect from the bridge into downtown. The option 1 on the left shows how that would work in that option. It's not shown in option 2, but it is in that defined option. The difference between these two, it's hard to tell exactly what's happening with these lines, but in option 1, there is a fully directional ramps between SR 14 and I-5. So no matter which direction you're going on I-5 and SR 14, you can make the connections north, south, east, west, including there are ramps from SR 14 to downtown. In option 1, there are ramps that are from downtown to south of I-5. So if you're coming from downtown going southbound, or if you're coming northbound from Oregon, you can exit to downtown. And all of those ramp functions that I just described are what is provided in the existing interchange today. They're just a different configuration, but the functions are similar to today. Option 2 is a version that is associated with the stacked alignment, where due to structural considerations, we are contemplating limiting the modifying the ramps to fit into the structural solution. And in this case, what's shown here is there would not be any ramps from downtown to South I-5. So in that case, if you were wanting to get from Oregon to downtown Vancouver, one would either go to Mill Plain and then turn left and down in through the grid, or you could go out eastbound on SR 14, turn around at the next interchange and come back into downtown, and vice versa, go in the other direction. So option 2 does not have downtown access to southbound, where option 1 does include those ramps. Next slide. In what we're calling the Vancouver Interchanges, so Mill Plain up to SR 500, we're reconstructing all the ramps, improving safety by including braided ramps, which is where one on-ramp crosses over the top of an off-ramp. Rather than having the weaving on the freeway itself, you braid them so they avoid each other. Or auxiliary lanes, which are lanes separated from mainline I-5, where that weaving can occur and not affect the mainline flow of the freeway. And again, all of these pedestrian connections, so all of the magenta colored lines going east-west across the freeway, all of those crossings would be improved. Bridges would be replaced, and in all cases, we would be making improvements to the bike and pedestrian connections across every one of those bridges to support the east-west travel. Future efforts will continue to refine the Mill Plain and Fourth Plain intersection improvements as it relates to both traffic flow and incorporation of the bike pedestrian connections across both of those more complex streets. With the that's what's happening on those streets. Next slide. On Hayden Island and Marine Drive, the change that is the most significant is the replacement of the North Portland Harbor Bridge. And that's the bridge that connects mainland of Portland to Hayden Island across that smaller waterway where the houseboats are. The previous planning efforts had assumed maintaining that bridge. But as time has passed and the lifespan of that bridge has decreased that much more, we're looking at the seismic resiliency in the entire I-5 stretch and wanting the same level of seismic resilience to provide the connectivity in a seismic event between Washington and Oregon. So we are assuming the replacement of the North Portland Harbor Bridge. We want to look at a range of different alternatives to understand different configurations and how they affect the width, the impacts of Hayden Island, the footprint, and the traffic flow associated with those. So the range is what we call a full interchange, a partial interchange, or a no interchange. And when we use that terminology, we're speaking about what is occurring on Hayden Island itself. In all cases, Marine Drive interchange is a full interchange, which means it has 4 ramps, 2 for going north, 2 for going south. Option 1 has a full interchange on Hayden Island, which is all 4 ramps, 2 going north, 2 going south. What's shown in this configuration is just a representation. Our team is looking at several options And this is just representative of what is one of the full interchange options. Option 2 is a partial interchange. In this case, we are providing ramps to and from Washington. In that graphic, they're connecting to Jansen Drive. But again, this is a representation. We have several variants of the partial interchange option. To access Hayden Island from Oregon would be provided through the Marine Drive interchange. And there's a blue line that goes across your screen left to right, which is a north-south direction in real world. And that is what we refer to as the arterial bridge that would connect Marine Drive to Hayden Island. So if a traveler is coming from I-5 from Portland, they would get off at Marine Drive, take a left on Marine Drive, a right on the arterial bridge, and they would be on the island. In the reverse direction, they would go south on the arterial bridge, continue straight through Marine Drive, and right back onto the freeway. Option 3 is a no interchange option on Hayden Island. And in this case, all traffic would access Marine Drive. And in this case, we're representing 2 arterial bridges that would connect between Marine Drive and Hayden Island. That is a very quick summary of all of the options we are looking at. We wanted to invite you to ask me any questions that I didn't cover well to get a better understanding of those options.
So we have just a couple minutes. I'm trying to keep us on time because we are going to go into breakout rooms to look at these in a little bit more. But if there's any questions at a high level for clarification before we go in, I'd like to give you the CWG an opportunity to ask those. If you can use your hand raise, or it's kind of hard to see everybody. I see Stephen Goff, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just curious, do all the options anticipate the replacement or the removal of the existing I-5 bridge?
Yes, in all cases, we're planning on removing that for seismic reasons as well as navigation in the river.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point, because what I didn't cover is how all these options address your the concerns that we heard last time. One of those would be the bridge lifts. And in all cases, because we're removing the existing bridge, that takes away the lift span, and the new bridge is at a height that would allow most of the vessels in the river to be able to go underneath the bridge.
Great. Thanks, Brad. Dane, I saw a hand clapping and now a hand up, so go ahead.
I meant to put the hand up.
Oh.
I hit the clap by accident. I just wanted, I had a really difficult time with the Hayden Island slide. Can you clarify the colors on the maps, what they mean in terms of the dark blue, the purple, the light purple, and the, I guess that's probably mostly what I need.
Yeah, that's a good question. The gray is the underlying highway alignment and configuration of the interchanges. The blue is what we were thinking of as more of an arterial type street, a little bit higher volume. So for example, Jansen Drive in the middle one is blue because that's where the interchange ramps are connecting to. So it'd be a little bit higher volume than the purple streets that are the rest of the network that would be anticipated to be a little bit lower volume, maybe more suitable for active transportation or the higher flow of active transportation, quieter streets.
And all the little circles at the intersections, is that something special?
Meant to be intersections. So
Just
if you look at the option 1, where the arterial bridge intersects or actually doesn't with Marine Drive and Jansen Drive, those are grade separated. So those are not intersections versus the circles actually being intersections. Good question.
Let's see, Susan, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, thanks. So Dane's answer to the previous question about these 3 configurations would eliminate the need to have a lifting span raised another question in my mind. Your answer, you said that this would have a clearance that was sufficient for most traffic on the river. Is that something that's been verified by like the Army Corps of Engineers? I know that one of the previous designs under consideration in the earlier decade ago study, the Army Corps of Engineers indicated that they would reject it for insufficient clearance.
Yeah, that is true. During the previous study, the Corps of Engineers highlighted an additional vessel that needed to use it, and therefore the bridge assumption was raised to 116 feet. We are renewing those studies, or in the process of those studies, and coordinating with the Corps of Engineers right now. At this point, because we're still in the middle of the study, we can't commit to it still being 116. But next year we're scheduled, as much as you can schedule the Corps of Engineers to come up with that conclusion of what the clearance should be. But I use most boats terminology because at 116, the study previously indicated that there were some vessels that might want to use it that were higher than 116, and there were mitigations to take care of that. So with the new study, we're trying to figure out if those taller vessels are still there or what the requirement is going to be.
Okay, and then thank you. My original question was related to the shape of the bridge. You indicated that on the side-by-side spans, there was one configuration that was curved, and then there was another configuration that was more straight, and then the stacked configuration was more straight. What was the design intent for having a curved bridge? Is it more resilient or prettier, or what were they going for with the curved one in the first place?
This is a good graphic to show, even though it's not the bridge that you're talking about, but it's because of North Portland Harbor that's shown on this graphic. If we're trying to connect into the existing North Portland Harbor Bridge, a curve is convenient because it allows us replacement of the new bridge next to the existing one, but aligns us to get back into the corridor on both sides of it, whether that's North Portland Harbor or by North Portland Harbor or Vancouver. Now that we've decided to replace the North Portland Harbor, it's easier to do the straight alignment from that perspective too, because we also want to be off to the side of North Portland Harbor as we allow for the constructability of that new bridge. So mostly it was maintenance of traffic rather than it's curved and looks nice. That's my understanding. But again, our thinking right now is a straight alignment does allow us an easier connection to maintain traffic across North Portland Harbor. Plus, it's a much easier bridge to construct with straight structural elements.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad and Susan, for those questions. We want to give you some more time in breakout groups to have a little more to dive in and ask more questions. So we are going to go into breakouts for about 15 minutes. Brad will be in one and Ben will be in the other one, and we'll be able to we have some questions that we'd like you to consider. So Kayla, can you go to the next slide about the breakout session questions? These are the questions that we're going to be asking you in the breakouts, but also for any other opportunity for questions. So what are your initial impressions of the design options? Are there any challenges or opportunities you see that we haven't identified? Which of the proposed design options do you anticipate improving your commute and why? And from a commuter perspective, do you have concerns about any of the other of the proposed options and why? So with that, we're gonna pop you into breakout rooms, 15 minutes. You should get a countdown and we will have an opportunity for more questions and discussion. See you in a bit.
And Kayla, you'll probably have to join your group. So on the pop-up, I don't know which one, are you on 1 or 2?
I'm in the same one as Anita. I think
So
that's 1.
in room 1.
Okay.
There's the join button.
Why don't I see the join button?
So click on in your thing, click on breakouts if you have it.
Yes.
And then just say room 1 highway design options and join. To give you the pop-up for that.
Don't have a pop-up. It looks like I can move people around, but I don't have any.
You can't join that session. On the right-hand side, it should say join.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Had to hover over it.
Okay.
Cool.
Can I get permission to join 2? Or can I go back and forth so I can take a look?
Yeah, let's see here. Okay, moving you to 2.
Thanks.
Domenico, are you here?
Are they showing up in your unassigned list, Andrew?
Oh,
there they go. This took a minute for them to join them.
Looks like they just left the meeting and didn't join the room yet.
All right, well, time for a break.
Hi, everybody. I know those breakout rooms go pretty fast, so I hope you had great conversations in your group. We took some notes. What we're actually going to do is, let's see, 5:20, we're a little behind. We're going to do a presentation on high capacity transit, and then we're going to take probably a 10-minute break after that. So we'll hand it over to Ben. Ben, you're on mute. There you go.
Great. There's two mutes. I had one on my phone and then I have to do the *6. So thank you, Anita. My name is Ben Dinas. I'm IBR technical lead with the urban design team and going to do an overview of high capacity transit and its components tonight. So just wanted to give a couple kind of definitions for what high capacity transit is. I won't read all of these through, but one is from Washington State Legislature and others from Oregon Metro. The two kind of high points wanted to point out are this ideas of exclusive guideways or transitways, and then just a higher capacity for transit riders. So what is high capacity transit and why is it important? It's important to provide an attractive travel choice within a region, equitable access to jobs and critical services, reduced environmental and climate impacts, and it alleviates pressure on other modal systems. So I think especially the 2 and 3 are important to think about big ways that we can have an impact on climate and equity issues is through high capacity transit. So just a quick overview of what the existing high capacity transit is in the region. There's the MAX, which is a light rail transit system operated by TriMet in Oregon. It includes enhanced stations, specialized vehicles, and it operates on a dedicated transitway. You can see the map there on the bottom. And then similarly, on the other side of the river, we have the Vine, which is operated by C-Tran. It also includes enhanced stations, specialized vehicles, and we're going to go over what these are in a couple slides. And then an important distinction is that it mostly uses shared roadway, so the majority of it is not dedicated right-of-way. So there are a couple different modes that are being studied by the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. That includes bus rapid transit within a dedicated right-of-way. And there's an example of that up on the top there. And then light rail transit, or some combination. So just looking specifically at bus rapid transit, one of the key elements is dedicated infrastructure. So that includes dedicated transitway, essentially dedicated lanes for the buses to operate within, separate from main roadway traffic. And then the other is transit signal priority, essentially when the traffic signals give priority to the buses over other traffic. And then another key component to bus rapid transit is enhanced stations. So dedicated shelters and amenities, raised platform for near level boarding and alighting. Alighting just means getting off the bus. And what that does is it allows for easier access for people of all abilities and can make boarding and alighting more efficient. And then real-time travel information. So those readouts that have signs about the next train arriving. Slide, please. And then the third key component to bus rapid transit is specialized vehicles. So they typically include high capacity. They're often articulated, as you can see in this example here of the Vine. Low floors and, low floors for near level boarding and alighting. Again, that's about equitable access and travel time, kind of efficient boarding and alighting. And then multiple doors for all door boarding and alighting. Once again, just makes that faster and more efficient. Slide, please. Maybe back and then,
My
there we go.
screen
Okay.
is frozen. Did it work?
Yes, we're into the infrastructure. Yep. So light rail, and you're going to see there's a lot of similarities between what is included in terms of the components of BRT and LRT. So LRT also has dedicated infrastructure. It includes dedicated tracks, overhead catenary system, traction power, essentially electrification that comes from wires overhead, and then transit signal priority, once again, allowing trains to go before other modes of traffic. And then light rail also has specialized vehicles. They are also high capacity, also include low floors for near level boarding and alighting, and have multiple entrances for all door boarding and alighting. And then last slide here, the enhanced stations for light rail transit include dedicated shelters and amenities, and then again, the raised platforms and the real-time travel information signage. And then I'll look to Anita as to whether we have time for questions, but happy to answer any that are out there.
I think we have a few minutes for questions if anybody has any. So feel free, let's see.
I had a question.
Okay.
I think in my mind, I was always envisioning the train as being an integrated part of the MAX system. Is that not what's going to happen?
An extension of light rail, or a light rail mode would very likely be operated by TriMet and would be MAX, yes.
Okay, so in other words, I can get on the train here in Vancouver and not have to get off and take different trains. I would just be going through to my destination in downtown Portland.
Right. I mean, if it was on the same line, then yes, it would all be part of the same system.
Cool. That's what I want to know. Thanks.
But just to be clear, you're tracking that there are several different transit design options that are being considered right now, that light rail hasn't been decided upon.
Let's see, Roger.
Thanks, Katie.
Roger, was that you clapping or did you have your hand up? Oh, you're on mute, Roger. And then Andre.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
So I have a couple of questions about the light rail. I think I read something in the literature that was sent out before that there wasn't a planned station on Hayden Island. In the breakout room, one of the things they were talking about was all that shopping that exists on Hayden Island and the traffic coming off Hayden Island now. I mean, I think you'd have to have a station there, but whether you'd want the light rail to stop there every time, I guess I can see that. I'm just looking at the density with all that shopping. I think you'd have to have a station there.
There's a planned station there.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
And then
you.
the other question is, with the talk of light rail, is there a plan or maybe some future thought to something high speed with Seattle? Because yeah, it's fine to go from Portland to Vancouver, but we actually need something high speed to get to Seattle. I don't know if this would be the causeway for that, or whether they would use the railroad bridge or what. But I mean, that question for the future bears asking.
Kelly Betteridge, I'm going to call on our transit expert here to give her thoughts about that.
Sorry, trying to find my buttons. But I think that's a great question. And that the answer to that question is definitely outside of the scope of this particular program. But it is something that is discussed, I would say, at the regional level. But again, not the focus of this particular project.
So thank you, Kelly and Roger. And maybe Roger, we can direct you to where you can find more information about that as well. And then I see Andre and then Susan, and then we're going to take a break. We're running, trying to keep on track. So we'll just take 2 more questions. So Andre, go ahead.
Totally. Thank you so much. I just had a question about why we're potentially limiting transit options. I don't know if there's any discussion of, having both or pitting these 2 modes against each other, where if we're expanding the roadway up top, could we not have, quick bus rapid transit as well as light rail potentially?
And are we going to be talking about this in our next section, some of the transit options?
We are going to be showing the different options that we're currently considering right when we get back from the break. So I think some of these questions that you all are curious about, we'll dig into a little bit deeper. But Kelly, why don't you have an answer for that?
Well, I think that the answer is hold on for the next section where I'm going to talk about the options that we're studying now. And I do think that there's some opportunity to talk about how we sort of mix and match or like optimize the investment for transit in general. So if you don't mind waiting until I dive into some of those details, I'd be happy to, in the next breakout, talk through some of the ways that other systems and our systems optimize themselves in regard to all modes.
Andre, we're going to do some breakouts as well so we can dive in. So thanks for being patient with us. I know you've asked that a couple times.
Hey, appreciate it. No worries.
Yes. Okay, Susan.
Hi, so my question also, I guess it may be answered in a later session, but it was about the cost of the different light rail options. My recollection is that under previous administrations, there was some opportunity for dedicated funds if light rail was approved on the bridge option. Is there an opportunity for some federal funding or granting that may follow light rail as a selection as opposed to the bus option?
Good question, Kelly. Why don't you take that now, since that's not something we're going to get deeply into about costs and funding in the next section.
Sure. Great question, Susan. Thanks for that. And so you are correct. The previous program had identified a funding source called New Starts in order to fund a portion of the transit component of the overall program. That program is still in existence. And just to be clear, it is something that is available for both dedicated BRT as well as LRT. And so the mode itself would not be a determinant necessarily of whether or not the program could continue to seek that funding opportunity. There are a number of requirements, but the mode itself, there are BRT projects that are funded through New Starts, just like there are LRT projects that are funded through New Starts.
Thanks, Kelly.
So it sounds like you're saying that of all of the options under consideration, funding for this NRT funding would be a possibility.
So there are a number of requirements around things like ridership and lots of different rating factors. And I would say that the mode itself is not determinant of whether or not you would be successful in garnering those funds. It's meeting the criteria for the program. Did that help to clarify?
Sure, somewhat. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to take a break, but I see, Dane, you had your hand up. Is it a question about funding? Is that what it is, or is it about transit?
Well, it is a little bit about funding, because I'm curious, this project is to build a bridge, and one of these options will be on there, or both of these options be on there. But then there's the operation costs going forward. And I'm just curious if those perspectives are being considered in this original design, because the transit authorities have to sign up to run this, and they're going to be replacing vehicles as they age out, and there's fuel cost with buses, and maybe they'll transition to something else. But I just, we don't want to necessarily build something, right, that will be expensive to operate. And I guess I'm just curious if the transit systems are providing you input then as into that.
Yeah, that's a very insightful question. I'll let Kelly add anything that I may miss, but I'll just say that you may notice tonight, two of our transit agency partners are here with us on this conversation tonight. Both CTRAN and TriMet are in attendance, and it's for that exact reason, because this is going to be their system at the end of the day. They will own and operate this system. The details of that will be worked out between them as part of this program process. So part of identifying what is that transit mode is a very integrated conversation being jointly led with program staff as you see them, but also our program partners. And in this instance, it's both TriMet and CTRAN, because there are real, permanent, long-term implications, both positive of benefits that can be achieved if we are able to build a good project, but there's also cost implications. And so it has to be something that is carefully considered and supported regionally.
Thanks, Katie. Susan, do you think you could hold your question, because we really kind of need to take about a 5-minute break? You could drop it into the chat. We want to make sure that we can
Sorry,
answer.
I just forgot to put my hand down.
Oh, okay, good. So I think what we'll do is take a 5-minute break. So we'll reconvene at we'll say 5:50, and then we'll have some presentation about the transit options and some breakout groups. All right, so we'll see you back in 5 minutes, and I'll give a call. So if you need to take a break about a minute before we need to reconvene. So we'll see you in a few minutes. All right, everybody, I'm giving you the 1 minute countdown. We're going to reconvene. So gather up your snacks and come on back. All right, everybody, welcome back. Hope you had a good break. We're going to continue. I'd like to hand it over next to Ryan LaPrause from our IBR team. He's going to talk about tolling. So take it away, Ryan.
Perfect. I will do it quickly. Is Kayla can put the slides up? Perfect. I'm just going to do a quick introduction to tolling for you guys tonight. So next slide. So the IBR program will identify an equitable toll system that ensures we can pay for construction of the program, as well as to promote travel time savings through improved reliability and mobility through the program area. The details are still being worked out on how that'll be implemented. Transportation projects of this scale typically require tolling as a funding component. They'll be used for toll revenues will be collected for the interstate bridge users, and they'll pay for the cost to replace the bridge. And the rates are likely to vary by time of day. So it can be variable, higher during the peak periods and lower during the off-peak periods to address traffic congestion. The IBR program is committed to identifying equitable tolling and pricing strategies, and those will be informed by kind of national best practices as well as best practices in Washington and Oregon. And other toll programs are working on that currently right now in the region. Next slide. As I mentioned, the IBR program is collaborating with both ODOT and WSDOT toll programs to identify a toll system that complements the regional tolling efforts that are currently underway. There's a study being done by ODOT, there's a study being done by Metro, as well as WSDOT has done some studies and has some toll programs implemented in the state. Each state approach and framework for transportation policy and investments will need to be accounted for as we get into the tolling approach is developed. Tolling authorization and rate setting for the replacement will rest with the legislatures and the transportation commission. So it's not up to the program. It will be decided by those commissions of both Oregon and Washington. The IBR and OLS toll programs are separate but interconnected efforts to manage and improve key corridors in the region through investments in the corridor in which the tolls are collected. So there's multiple tolling studies being done, as I just mentioned. ODOT's got one down or I-205. They've got one kind of for the overall region in the Portland Metro region, and ours is in coordination with that, looking at a combined coordination project from the two programs. And tolling or congestion price alone cannot solve the problems associated with the existing bridge or eliminate the need for its replacement. So it's just kind of a summary bullet there for you. So as a quick introduction for everybody tonight to the tolling that's being considered for the IBR program and how it's related to the other programs in the area.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions from the CWG? Does not seem so. I don't see any. So I think we'll move on. So next, we're going to be preliminary transit design options with Kelly. I hope Kelly's back.
Sorry, I am. Sorry, the buttons get me every time. Good afternoon. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you guys tonight to talk a little bit about the work that we have done this year and will continue to do throughout this year. And then I'm going to walk through each of the options that we are currently looking at in regard to which one will best serve the region. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So just to talk a little bit about what we have been up to, and I think this really builds on the conversation that we're having right before break. So we've been working really closely with our partners at the transit agencies as well as the metropolitan planning organizations. And what we did was we developed a list of 10 transit representative alignments. And so that's what I'll be presenting to you tonight. And the intention of creating these sort of high level concepts is so that we can understand a little bit about how each of them perform in relation to each other. So there are different modes, there are different alignments, and what does each of those sort of bring to the table in regard to what that, that project would provide. So we worked very closely with our transit agency partners once we had identified those 10 representative alignments to dig a little bit more deeply into understanding how each of those agencies would operate that investment. So for instance, how would their existing bus network work with this new investment? How would the existing Max Light Rail work with this investment? And so each of those sort of pieces of information is brought to the table as we create each of these representative alignments. And then we use all of that information as an input into the regional model, which is a really important tool that we use for really large infrastructure projects like this that sort of forecasts to the future for future population, for future land use, for future jobs, so that we can understand not only how this investment will benefit folks that are here now, but what this means in terms of the future. Because as you know, this isn't just about the problems that we're solving right here today, but it's also thinking about how we have the best possible program in the future. We also worked with all of our transit partners to develop a list of what ended up being 17 different measures that we'll use to gather data about each of these representative alignments so that we can understand how each of them perform. And we'll be sort of reporting that out within our transit partner group. And then we will engage in a dialogue about how each of those options perform based on those measures that we had identified. And then in 2022, which is happening very soon, we will be collaborating with partners and stakeholders to develop and reach consensus on the interstate bridge replacement multimodal design solution, which will include a transit component. So with that in mind, what I want to do is just sort of give you an overview of the 10 options, and then we'll have images of each of them. So the first option is what's called a no build. And essentially what that means is that we look to the future and the program itself is not built, but the future still happens. And so we use that as a way to sort of measure against the other build options. The next option is a bus on shoulder option. And so we'll dive into the details of that. Then there are 3 bus rapid transit options, 4 that are specific to light rail, and then 1 option that includes both an extension of a dedicated bus rapid transit as well as an extension of the existing light rail. With each of these options, just something to keep in mind as you're looking at them at a high level, that each of them assumes that there is dedicated space for the transit option between Expo Center, which is the current terminus of the Max Yellow Line, and Hayden Island. There's also dedicated space for transit to operate on the replacement bridge, and that in all of these options, there continues to be express buses that operate. And in this instance, they operate on the shoulders of the freeway where it's possible. So when the program is reconstructed, there would be room for buses to operate on the shoulder within the bridge influence area. After we sort of talk through these options at a high level, we'll continue to be doing lots of work to really dig into the given option and talk more about its terminus location, details about park and ride and stations and all those really important sort of more micro pieces. But today we're going to talk at a high level about the alignments and the modes. All right, next slide, please. So the first option is bus on shoulder. And so this particular option assumes that the C-Tran Express 101 and 105 operate as bus on shoulder in the bridge influence area in both directions. So as I'm sure you know and remember, the existing bridge does not allow for that. It has very tiny shoulders. I don't even know if they would be called shoulders, but the future bridge would have a shoulder that would be wide enough that a that a bus could operate in it. And so this includes both the C-Tran Route 105, which travels from the north, makes a stop. It's Salmon Creek to 99 to downtown Portland, and also the Route 101, which would operate from downtown Vancouver to downtown Portland. One other thing to think about with bus on shoulder is that for all of the additional options that I'm about to share with you, both the high capacity transit options, so either BRT or LRT or both, as well as bus on shoulder would happen in the future, which is to say, if we ended up with a bus rapid transit project, the express buses would still operate like this if the program or when the program was built. All right, next option. So there are 3 bus rapid transit options. So sort of Goldilocks, we have they all are assumed to have a transfer at the Expo Center max. And so there was a question about this, sort of how do we tie into the existing service? So all 3 would be in a dedicated facility that would transfer at the Expo Center max station. One would traverse through a dedicated facility to a terminus near Turtle Place in downtown Vancouver. One would travel on an alignment similar to what we looked at with the previous program. And another would sort of travel in an alignment that was very close to I-5 and would extend all the way to a terminus near Kiggins Bowl. So we'll dig into each of those a little bit. Next slide. So that first one, which we chatted about, is an extension from the yellow line traveling across the river to a terminus where it would tie into existing service near Turtle Place. And one thing I want to highlight as we move forward is that the dark gray lines that you see on the map, those are meant to delineate the investments in bus rapid transit that are both in place today and are planned or will be constructed soon in the future. So looking at the line that's sort of in the middle of the map, that's the existing bus rapid transit line, the Vine. And then the one that's a little bit to the south is the line that was recently funded and is under construction. And then the line that's all the way to the north and kind of runs north-south, that is a planned extension called the Vine Line 90, or the 99th.
Highway 99. Highway 99.
Highway 99. Thank you. Thanks, Katie. And so just that's on all of the maps, this is all what is included, but I just wanted to be clear that that's what we're trying to delineate, is so that folks can kind of see how these investments would tie in with the existing service. Next slide. Great. So this one is an extension, again, from the Expo Center, traveling in a dedicated facility that we sort of call hugging I-5. So it would travel along I-5 to a terminus near Kiggins Bowl. It's the longest BRT alignment that we're currently looking at. And then the third option would be a dedicated BRT that would travel on the alignment that was identified in the previous program. So it would be, again, an extension from Expo Center. It would travel through downtown on a couplet, and it would terminate near McLaughlin and I-5. And so next we'll talk about the 4 light rail transit options. So the first one is the project that was essentially looked at previously. So we'll call that the 2013 locally preferred alternative. There's also another option where we have a single station in downtown Vancouver. So each of these is an extension of the existing Max Yellow line that travels across the river and makes a connection to Vancouver. So this would just be a single station in Vancouver. Then we have another option where we're hugging I-5 again, as we extend to sort of that McLaughlin and I-5 terminus. And then the last one would be hugging I-5 all the way to a terminus near Kiggins Bowl. So we'll dig into each of those a little bit too. So the first one probably looks familiar to those of you who followed the previous program, but this was the project that was selected to move forward. It's an extension of the Max Yellow Line across the river, travels as a couplet through downtown with a terminus near McLaughlin and I-5. The second option is sort of the shortest option that we're looking at in terms of light rail, where we're again extending the yellow line from its current terminus near Expo Center across the river to a single station, probably somewhere near Turtle Place. The third option is one of two options where we're sort of hugging I-5 or running along I-5. And so both of these options, like I said, would be an extension of the existing Max Yellow Line, would travel across the bridge and then run along I-5. One would terminate near I-5 in McLaughlin, and the second would terminate further north at Kiggins Bowl. And then the last option that we're looking at is that option that I mentioned, where we're essentially both extending the yellow line from its current terminus at Expo Center to a new station on Hayden Island. And we're also constructing a dedicated facility for BRT from Hayden Island to essentially the Turtle Place area. And so using slightly different language when we talk about the BRT options, because it's not, if it's an LRT option and we're extending, then there's a terminus, meaning that that's then where the yellow line would end. But with BRT, it's not really a terminus because the BRT vehicles are then making their way onto their existing service. So they would traverse across the river in a dedicated facility, but then they would return to the route that they currently or in the future will traverse on and continue to provide service outside of that dedicated facility. So a little bit different in terms of the language that we use when we explain the BRT options versus the LRT options. So that is the high level overview. Happy to answer questions. And I also know that we're going to have an opportunity to jump into the breakout rooms.
So let's see, where are we on timeline? So we have a little bit of time, but if you, yeah, we have about 10, 15 minutes to ask some questions. So maybe Andre, you had asked a couple and I want to cue that up because I know you've been really patient. So I'd like you to give you that opportunity.
Oh, I really appreciate that. So one thing I'm thinking through is just like our VMT and greenhouse or vehicle miles travels and greenhouse emission goals. And I don't know if there's been any research done on how these different options impact the regional outcomes in those categories. And if there's any plan to do some analysis so that when we're looking at these options, we can get a more holistic approach on what that looks like.
That's a great question. So I mentioned at the beginning fairly quickly that we are in the process of gathering information for sort of 17 different measures. And one of those measures will include understanding a little bit more about the impact of VMT, vehicle miles traveled, with each of these options. That is something that's fairly typical on transit projects and something that is required in particular if you decide to seek federal funding for transit investments. So that is one of the things that we will be collecting as we think through these options.
Awesome, thank you. And I had one quick additional one, just regarding ridership. I know that different modes lead to higher ridership rates. And so is that included in those 17 tracking categories?
Yes, so we will also be reporting ridership. And maybe just to clarify, because I like to talk transit, lots and lots of things that factor into ridership, right? So also things like the frequency of the service, as well as the connections that it makes. So all kinds of different factors. But yes, ridership is a very important factor that we will also be collecting and reporting on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly and Anita. Thank you.
Let's see, I had a question that, and it may be for some of the other IBR team from Roger. I know, Roger, you were having some trouble raising your hand with your Zoom. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. How are you handling phase construction if you are completely removing the existing bridge and rebuilding the new one?
Ooh,
Specific.
that's a good one.
Yeah. Whoever would like to answer that on the team.
But maybe a Brad question?
If I was listening, I could answer maybe. What was the question?
It's in the chat, Brad. How are you handling phase construction if you're completely removing the existing bridge and building a new one?
That is exactly how we're going to phase it. We're first going to build the new one and move traffic over to it, and then we can remove the old one.
All right, thank you. Let's see, I see Susan and then Stephen Koch.
Hi, so I had a question about why the high density rapid transit most northbound option was terminating at Kiggins Bowl. There's not a whole lot of parking there. But there already is dedicated park and ride both at, I believe, 78th, 99 and 139th. Whereas Kiggins Bowl is wedged next to a pioneer historic marker area, historic old-timey cabin, and Friday night football. Why is that the furthest north location under consideration?
Good question. So the Kiggins Bowl options, I think, came from partners in a desire to consider options that did go further north than the previous program, which again terminated near I-5 in McLaughlin. And so that particular option was something that was studied under the previous NEPA environmental document. And so I think that that is part of the interest. As part of these conversations, there will be discussions about park and ride in general and places where they might be placed or augmented and those types of things. But that was the genesis of that particular option for this conversation, was a desire to try and extend further north.
Susan.
Okay. Thank you. I'll remember to put down my hand now.
I think I saw Stephen Koch. Did you have your hand up or did you get your?
I did, but Susan asked the exact question I was going to ask.
Oh, perfect. You two are on the same wavelength.
Nice. Like a mind meld.
Yeah, it's a good group. Any other questions? Oh, Dane. No, that's the thumbs up. So any other questions before we go in? Like Soren's clapping. That's good. That's not a thumbs
sorry.
up.
That meant to be my hand.
Oh, see, that's good. Whenever I see that, I'll make sure I know it's not just clapping. So go ahead, Soren.
This is just, a question of following on the question about the terminus at Kiggins Bowl. Is there consideration in the planning now for eventual extension of light rail? Because I mean, that's sort of an inevitable, not inevitable, but it seems like, once you make it go so far, there would be desire to make it go someplace else or further. And is that sort of baked into the considerations for Kiggins Bowl or Turtle Park or McLaughlin?
That's a good question. And so if there is anyone from RTC on the line, please augment my answer. But the current planning work for the Clark County region does not include an additional extension for light rail at this time. And so I think that that's the short answer to your question. All of these conversations are conversations that evolve over time. And so at this particular point in time, that has not been identified.
Billy, in recent conversations, this has started coming up, and at least not precluding the ability for it to extend in the future. So while there is no plan for it, we don't want to say it can never be done.
Sure. From a design perspective, in terms of, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Not wanting to preclude anything. Of course, I answered the question like a planner, which is what I am. And Brad answered it like an engineer, because that's what he is. So I think between those two, they're both right answers.
Good thing you're on the same team. Thank you.
That's right.
Brad and Kelly. Stephen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just curious, do any of the those options require or predicated upon local funding for any portion of that? And if so, how much does that impact the decision criteria for what is ultimately selected?
That is a really great question. And so the sort of the funding picture of this conversation is not something that is the it's not the sole focus. There are lots of conversations about various mechanisms for funding, but there hasn't been a specific conversation around transit and funding. As we mentioned in the, I don't recall if it was the breakout or after we came back from the breakout, but the previous program did pursue a federal program that is specific to high capacity transit. And a decision has not been made at this time whether this project will seek that same funding source.
Thanks, Kelly. Any other questions? So we're going to move into breakout sessions so we can dive into these a little bit deeper. Kayla, can you pop up the breakout session questions, and then we will, just so you know what we're going to be asking for you. Basically, from a user perspective, what are the most important considerations for making transit an attractive option for traveling within the corridor in the region? And which of these options would most likely impact your travel behavior? So we'll have 2 breakout sessions again and take some notes, and then we'll come back. All right, everybody, welcome back. Like I said, in our group, we were kind of behind on schedule, then we got ahead of schedule. So we do have a few minutes for kind of a group discussion with the CWG. We had some really great conversations in our group in particular about just the questions that we'd asked about, important considerations for attractive transit options. I really liked, who was the idea? Was it Stephen having a bar cart on the max? Wi-Fi, and then other options that would most likely impact your travel. So there's some really good conversation that I'd like folks to share in the larger group so you all can hear. So why don't we start with our group, and maybe, I think there's a lot of really good points. So I'd like to just kind of offer, maybe Michaela, you mentioned in particular about safety, which I thought was really an important consideration on your choice. You want to share that? Is she here? I didn't see that. Okay, well, how about you, Andrea? You had some good ideas as well.
Great. Yeah, I think since this is a commuter working group, it was important to think about what type of things would be supportive to people commuting. And so one idea I had was like potentially offering Wi-Fi on whatever mode. I think it would work better on certain modes, obviously, but thinking through the tools that would help people change their behavior from driving and it make something else become more attractive.
One other option you mentioned is having maybe the light rail close to cars.
Total, yes. Okay. And so that was specific to the alignment that we discussed earlier, where there are 3 alignments. And in 2 out of the 3, the high capacity transit is separated from the automobile travel. And I think there's actually a benefit to having them be on the same grade so that people can actually see when they're stuck in traffic, they can see people on the high capacity transit moving past them, which I think can really shift behavior.
Thank you.
I like that. It's the FOMO option.
Exactly.
I didn't raise my hand, but I just have to second Andre's statement because it's like, I don't know how many times I'm on I-84 and I see the light rail just blasting by and everybody's happy on the light rail and I'm grumpy. That's all.
So let's see, Katie, was there anyone else? We did have a jam board, but I kind of wanted to have a little conversation, and then we didn't actually get an opportunity to talk about the highway options either. So we could do that too after we have a little bit of, I'd like to have a little CWG conversation and maybe share the jam boards if that will work.
Whatever you would like to do. If you want to share the jam boards, it's a little tricky because the groups, both times we broke up, ended up being different sets of people. But that's okay. I think it's up to you, however you want to lead it, but we can definitely share the screens and have Kayla and Jason, who took the notes, hit the high points from each of their sessions. And then the people who were in those sessions could feel free to add on or elaborate on any of the themes that are mentioned.
Okay, let's do that. I think, Stephen, you've got your hand up too.
Yeah, one thing that didn't come up in either one of the discussions was it occurs to me as well that the rail options are better suited to large event transportation. I mean, the buses get full. If there's something big going on downtown or, the ball games and that sort of thing, the trains are more flexible in accommodating larger groups of people than a bus. And they, depending on the style of the cars and stuff, they're also more comfortable in a bus. That's just something to think about, from at least occurred to me.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. So Kayla and Jason, would you like to share the Jamboard notes that you?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So the number one thing that I heard everyone say in this group was that reliability is a major factor. We heard that 3 or 4 different times. Someone said, I don't mind if my commute takes longer on mass transit. It's much more important for me to have a reliable trip. Reliability is a major factor. If transit isn't reliable and consistent, it completely blows up your schedule and you're more likely to just hop in the car. Echoing, I think, what Andre said, if we can see traffic backed up next to us while we're on the light rail, then we're gonna be more happy that we took the mass transit. It's the FOMO effect. Someone said that convenience makes a really big difference. Access to parking is part of that. If, you know, every time you go to the light rail station, you see a full parking lot or a full parking garage, you're not very likely to want to keep trying that option. So having enough parking available on site when you board the light rail or whichever transit mode is a huge difference. The less I have to transfer, the more likely I would be to take transit. We need to have a holistic approach and solve regional issues instead of just local ones. So I think that relates to, you know, having that connectivity on both sides of the river. Michaela, I'm not sure if you already echoed this in our report out, but the bus being a safer option or having the perception of more safety than light rail. It was mentioned that she prefers the bus because there are more reliable safety measures in place. And it makes more sense to have an option that goes further north to a pre-existing park and ride location. It will be hard to change people's commute if we, if we aren't able to provide access to where the line already runs. I think everything else I have on here is repeats. So yeah, the one that I heard elevated the most was the reliability, the convenience, and just making sure that there's that connectivity between other routes.
That's good. Maybe we could hear from what Jason's room said, unless do folks have things to add?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious about the bus is safer, if someone wanted to expand on that a little bit, just to help us understand that a little bit more.
I wasn't in that group, but I have friends, more women friends who, when you're on a bus, the bus driver can intervene versus if you're on the light rail, depending on the cart you in, there's less of a chance for someone to intervene. So they do find buses to be safer in that circumstance, what I've heard from some of my friends.
Yeah, and that was what Michaela shared in our group. And it had to do with, I think, that as well, having a bus driver. And I recall sometimes the transfers aren't as far of a walk during certain times of the day.
Perfect. That's great. If somewhere in the notes that could be added, because there's a lot of different ways one could interpret safety. But that's
Right.
That's a distinguishing element that's important. Thanks.
And that is what I was going to comment on additionally. That comment came up right at the end of our session. And so I think we just need to be very strategic about our language around safety and who it is feeling safe, because I think that actually something that feels very safe for one person doesn't necessarily feel safe for other members of the community. And so thinking through whatever system we do needs to be holistically safe, and we need to be clear about what safety means and whether it's feeling perceived as safe is valued more than like actual safety as well.
Thank you, Andre and Victor. All right, Jason, you want to share your Jamboard?
Absolutely. Let's see here. So we went about the transit options. We kind of spent more time on the question one from a user experience and perspective. What's most important, and really what you'll see come out very strongly is a convenience factor. and a shortened ride time factor. We spent or heard multiple comments about a 1-seat ride, reduce the amount of transfers. The fares came out wanting to be able to pay once to get from your destination, from your origination to your destination, making sure that the system was convenient and user-friendly for the rider. When we spoke specifically about which options looked or would most likely impact your travel, we had a vote for the 2003 LPA, living in Uptown and working in St. John's and being able to walk or bike to the Max or the train and get across was an attractive option. Talking about park and rides were an attractive option as well, making sure that they were large enough and accessible enough for people to park and get across the bridge. There was talk of have technology involved in that, so there was real-time accessibility to know if your park and ride was full or not, or if there were parking spaces so you could get there. And then we also just had some questions on the hugging of the I-5 option and what the environment would look like, and just wanted to make sure that a stop in downtown Vancouver and the transit mode was an important piece. So that's kind of what we talked about for the transit design options, and happy to have anybody in that group weigh in.
There's one comment I think that should probably be added, which was a little bit of a discussion on the speed difference between whether the transit options are going through downtown versus hugging I-5 alignment.
Okay, how would you like that reflected, Brad? Just
speed through the downtown intersections would be slower than the speed of an alignment hugging I-5.
Maybe travel time?
Travel time, that'd be fine. Travel time instead of speed. Of watching people watch you type.
Anything else?
Real-time editing.
Anything else from that group that you want to share? Refinement? So we have about 10 more minutes, so maybe we could go to the highway, if you can remember. We talked about that earlier in the meeting, so maybe Kayla. Oh, Stephen, well, we can put that up there.
I'm happy to continue on, but Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, am I unmuted? I can't tell.
You're good.
Oh, I noticed that you guys said, like for us, we were saying most of us were saying we didn't mind if our trip was longer as long as it was reliable. And I noticed you guys had a sticky that I was interpreting saying that you guys wanted it to be fast. Not that any of us want it to be slow, but it just was that the opposite of us, or can you elaborate that more?
The last note that we were just talking about, is that what you're referring to?
No, you had one in the thing that said like shorter time, or so, I can't remember now. I have blonde hair, so
He was just I think, Stephen, was that in our group, I was there, it was really emphasis on reliability, right? And not having forced transfers, like ease of use. And you just articulated that travel time in the other group was a priority.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie.
So I think he was just curious, like he noticed that it was like different priorities that were articulated in the groups and found it fascinating, right? Maybe.
Fascinating. Important. So let's quickly, Jason or Kayla. Well, Jason, why don't you go first on your the highway options Jamboard, and then Kayla, you can do yours.
Absolutely. So we kind of jumped around. We didn't, I know there was 4 identified questions on the highway options. We kind of just jumped around, and We had some concerns about the configuration that does not allow direct access to Highway 14, as well as to downtown Vancouver. Brad, I think you addressed that question in the first group. Maybe you can address that again.
All of them do provide access to Highway 14. So I'm not sure that note is captured correct, or somebody didn't, I didn't say it correctly. It's the access between I-5 and downtown Vancouver.
Okay. We had comments that the curved bridge seems like a bit of a safety issue, and there was a preference for the straight alignment. We had a couple of comments as well as thinking about designs for the future and expansion. We had a comment on bike riding in the stacked alignment, what riding a bike would feel like underneath the freeway. But again, I believe it wouldn't be directly underneath the freeway. It might be in a stacked alignment, the bikes are off to the side a bit, I believe, in that design. Brad's shaking his head.
Yeah, it can go either way. The cross sections showed either under a freeway alignment or off to the side, and it's stacked.
Right. We had a question about adding another interchange within there, and we currently have 7 interchanges in the 5-mile stretch. So currently adding interchanges within that space was not in our plans. We talked about a concrete design would feel like a mistake, and steel is an option to go for. Interchanges on Hayden Island, and what are the impacts of travel time from Vancouver to Hayden Island, and what would you save versus not saving if there were no Hayden Island interchanges? And then we had a vote for the stacked alignment option, and having off and on ramps near the end of the bridge creates a backup. So making sure just the interchanges are strategically placed.
Yeah, and this is Steve too. We didn't get time to get an answer, but I was curious too about whether the design plan takes into account the impact, both the design and the just the access, if tolling winds up being a part of the implementation here. How does that affect both the design and all of these traffic flows here, because those are always a bottleneck?
Tolling is part of the analysis in all of the work we're doing. So everything that we're looking at would assume some level of tolling.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from that group? Stephen, were you in that group? Koch? I see you have your hand up. Was that? He's unmuting himself.
I'm trying. I'm trying. No, that's left over. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So Kayla, do you want to share the last Jamboard that we had with our, let's say in our group, we had a lot of more questions and answering questions about just the different highway options. So we didn't quite get to the specifics, but go ahead and share what we've got so far, Kayla.
Sure, yeah. I captured a handful of the concerns that we talked about. There's a concern about the lack of on-ramps getting in and out of downtown. And then on the flip side, I believe someone mentioned that they don't use them currently. And please let me know if I didn't capture that correctly. I'm happy to adjust that. For early morning commute hours, Mill Plain is backed up to Union Station and it can get very ugly. The Hayden Island Marine Drive interchange option seems like a high potential to have backup on the freeway. There's already quite a bit of backup. So this person was not a fan of that interchange option, just from the concern of adding additional traffic on the freeway. There was a concern about the interconnectivity of high capacity transit and multimodal travel. If those two options are physically separated, In other words, if there's not a good amount of connectivity between whatever transit option is offered and bike lanes, walking paths, that sort of thing. There's a concern that the transit may not be that useful if folks who are commuting in a way besides driving aren't able to access it. There was concern about the stacked alignment option. Someone pointed out that that didn't seem to have any direct connections to downtown. They weren't a fan of that option because it was going to take longer to get in and out of downtown. The comment there from IBR was that we're still doing analysis on how much extra time it would take to get in and out of downtown using the stacked alignment. Another comment about in the event of an emergency or a vehicle accident, was there a preference from emergency responders in the sake of an emergency getting across the bridge and being able to get to that accident? Anita, was there anything else that you caught as far as comments or concerns?
I think that about covers it. Anyone else in our group? Questions in particular? Comments?
Just a clarification, the one note that you have with Hayden Island Marine Drive Interchange, that should start off with the no Hayden Island Marine Drive Interchange option. I believe is what that was referring to. If there's no interchanges, then it would have a high potential to back up on the freeway. I believe that's what we were talking about. Not a fan of that option, not a fan of having no interchanges. I'm pretty sure.
I think that was my comment. That's correct, Brad.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging in there with us and providing comments. So when I want to talk about next steps, and so Kayla, if you can talk about, put up the slide on the program timeline, slide 56. So we're going to talk a little bit about the program timeline and next steps at this point. So next slide. As you know, the intention of forming this community working group has been to hold 2 focus area kind style meetings to gather feedback during this phase of the program planning. We've achieved that objective for forming this group. And at this time, we're not currently planning for future meetings. However, as program planning evolves in the next several months, we may wish to convene this group to ask you for additional feedback about multimodal commuter experience. So, but wait, it's not over yet. We're still looking for your feedback. So we would like you to participate in a number of things as you see your interest is. So there will be, if you can go to there it is, the design options survey. It's going to be it's open now between now and December 10th. And so if you want to dive down deeper into some of these design options and provide some more comments, the ones that you provided tonight will be conveyed, but there's also other options, and they're in Spanish, Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, Slavic, and Somali. So there's the link there. Next slide. We also have an online open house. And so it's live now. So feel free to check that out as well. There's a lot of really great information about the project, other information. Some of you were interested in the other working groups, the Downtown Vancouver and the active transportation. So there's some good information there for you to access as well. Next slide. Again, additional engagement opportunities, social media. We have a newsletter sign up if you haven't done that. There's an email if you have any questions, and today's meeting recording and materials are available at this link. And we do have all the materials at the program information library at this link as well. So with that, I'd really like to thank you all for participating in these last 2 meetings. It was great to get to know you. Super appreciate your commitment and feedback and participation. And I think we just have a couple minutes left, so I might like to leave it open if anyone has any additional questions or comments before we adjourn at 7. So we have like 3 minutes. So feel free to just unmute yourself and ask any final questions before we adjourn.
I wanted to thank you folks, all of the committee members here that are, taking your own time out for these evenings and stuff to do all of this work. I mean, I know it's an awful lot of work, and there's a million options and a million opinions, and I know it's kind of challenging to try to put that together, but really do appreciate the effort that the group is going to, and hopefully that the solution will come out of this that we can actually implement.
Thank you, Stephen. All right. Well, thank you all again, and please stay involved. Let us know if you have any other questions, and I'm sure we'll see you all around. So I think we're done for tonight. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.